The army declared him dead 8 years ago. Yesterday, he rang his own doorbell. Sarah froze in the kitchen, the familiar chime echoing through the quiet Ohio house. It was a Tuesday. No one ever visited on a Tuesday. Her son, sitting at the table, dropped his spoon with a clatter that seemed deafening in the sudden silence. She pressed her eye to the peephole, and her breath caught in her throat. She stopped breathing entirely. The man standing on her porch wore a faded military jacket. He was older, much thinner than she remembered, but those eyes, they were her husband's. Michael Carter. The same Michael Carter who had been declared killed in action in Afghanistan 8 years prior. There had been a funeral. A neatly folded flag presented to her. A gravestone in the local cemetery with his name carved into it. So who in the world was standing outside her house? He knocked again, a gentle, hesitant sound. "Sarah, it's me." His voice, muffled through the door, sent a shockwave through her. Her heart slammed against her ribs, a frantic, trapped bird. From the kitchen, her son whispered, "Mom." His small voice snapped her out of her trance. Taking a deep, ragged breath, she unlocked the door and pulled it open. The man who looked like her husband took a slight step back, as if he wasn't sure he belonged there. Up close, the changes were more stark. Scars traced faint lines across his face, one deep and jagged near his temple. He looked at her with an intensity that made her skin prickle, like he was trying to memorize every line, every feature. "You cut your hair," he said, his voice soft and raspy. That one small detail, a detail no stranger could possibly know, made her knees feel weak. She had cut it short just last year, tired of the long locks Michael had always loved. But even as relief threatened to overwhelm her, something felt wrong. His voice was deeper than she recalled, his posture more rigid and guarded. Her son, now standing beside her, stared up at the stranger with wide, confused eyes. "Dad?" he asked, the word hanging in the air, full of a child's desperate hope. The man's eyes immediately filled with tears. He knelt down slowly, his movements stiff, until he was at eye level with the boy. "Wow," he breathed. "You're so much taller than I imagined." Imagined, the word snagged in Sarah's mind. Michael had left when their son was just a toddler of 3. Now he was 11. How could he have imagined his height? What did that even mean? A cold knot began to form in her stomach. She needed air, needed space to think. She stepped out onto the porch, pulling the door closed behind her, leaving her son and this man inside. "Where have you been?" she whispered, the question she'd screamed into her pillow 1,000 times. He hesitated, his gaze dropping to the worn porch steps. "Captured." The single word landed with a thud, heavy and dark. "They told us you were dead," she countered, her voice shaking. "I know." "You never called? You never tried to reach us?" "They didn't let me." His answers were short, clipped, offering no detail, no emotion. They were too short. Her eyes fell to his hands. They were calloused and rough, the hands of a man who had endured hardship. But something was missing. The small, circular burn scar on his left thumb. Michael had burned his thumb badly on the grill back in the summer of 2009. She remembered the incident perfectly, the yelp of pain, the way she had carefully wrapped it in gauze. This man's thumb was smooth, unblemished. No scar. The cold knot in her stomach twisted into a sickening lurch. This wasn't just a feeling anymore. This was proof. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat of terror. "Show me," she said, her voice barely a whisper, but firm. He looked up, his expression guarded. "Show you what? Your left hand." A flicker of something crossed his face. It wasn't confusion, it was fear. It was there for only a second, a fleeting micro-expression, but she saw it. And in that one terrifying second, Sarah knew. She knew this man, the man who looked like her husband, who knew she'd cut her hair, who was inside with her son, was not Michael. Who was this person, and what did he want? Her mind raced. The funeral, the flag, the official declaration from the army. Had it all been a lie? Or was this something far more sinister? She took a half-step back, her hand instinctively reaching for the doorknob. She had to get her son. The man watched her, his expression unreadable now, the brief flash of fear replaced by a calm, calculating stillness. "Sarah," he said, his voice losing its soft edge, becoming something harder, colder. "We have a lot to talk about." The afternoon sun felt cold on her skin as she stood on her own front porch, a stranger in her own life, facing a ghost who wasn't a ghost at all. The real nightmare, she realized, was just beginning. What happens next will unravel a conspiracy that goes deeper than she could ever imagine. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the next part of this story. Thanks for watching. Sarah kept her eyes locked on his. She wouldn't be the first to look away. "Your left hand," she repeated, her voice steady despite the tremor in her soul. He slowly, almost reluctantly, raised it. She scanned his palm, his fingers, the back of his hand. No burn scar. No mark, nothing. Just smooth, unblemished skin where a deep, angry scar should have been. Her chest tightened, a band of ice squeezing her lungs. "You burned it." It was the 4th of July, 2009. A firework went wrong. He swallowed, his Adam's apple bobbing. "Some scars fade, Sarah. Not that one. Never that one." She had dressed that wound herself for weeks, cleaning it, wrapping it in fresh gauze. She knew its shape, its texture, the way it puckered the skin. It was as much a part of her memory as his face. He saw the doubt solidifying in her eyes, hardening her expression. His jaw clenched. "I was a prisoner for 8 years, Sarah." His voice cracked, a raw, broken sound. "They did things to us." For a fleeting second, a wave of guilt washed over her. What if she was wrong? What if the unspeakable trauma he'd endured had somehow changed him, erased pieces of him, even healed scars that should have been permanent? Was she being cruel to a man who had already suffered so much? The bedroom door creaked open, pulling her from her spiraling thoughts. Her son, just a small boy when his father left, peeked around the frame. His eyes, wide and uncertain, darted between her and the stranger in the living room. "Mom, is he really Dad?" The question, so simple and yet so profound, hit her like a physical blow. The man's gaze shifted to the boy, and a look of profound pain filled his eyes. So deep it seemed to swallow all the light in the room. "I used to sing you to sleep," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "With that silly cowboy song." Sarah's breath caught in her throat. The cowboy song, it was their secret, a goofy little tune he'd made up one night when their son was just a baby. A lullaby that belonged only to the three of them. No one else knew about that song. Not their closest friends, not even her own mother. Her wall of doubt began to crumble. How could he know? "Sing it," she whispered, the word barely audible. He froze. Just for a moment, a flicker of something unreadable crossed his face. Panic. Confusion. Then he began to hum a low, hesitant melody. The tune was right. Her heart leaped. It was him. It had to be. But then he started to sing the words, and they were wrong. Just slightly, but undeniably wrong. A line was missing from the second verse. A single, crucial word was replaced with another. It was like looking at a near-perfect copy of a masterpiece, where only the artist would notice the flawed brushstroke. Her heart, which had just soared with hope, sank back into the icy pit of her stomach. "How do you know that song?" she asked, her voice cold again. He took a step closer, his hands raised in a placating gesture. "Because I'm your husband." His eyes were desperate now, pleading with her to believe. He looked frantic, trapped. It was then that she noticed a flash of movement outside the window. A black SUV, sleek and unfamiliar, had turned onto their quiet suburban street. It moved slowly, predatorily, before pulling to a stop directly across from their house. The engine didn't turn off. It hummed with a low, threatening growl. The man followed her gaze, and his expression transformed instantly. The desperation was gone, replaced by a stark, primal fear. It was the most genuine emotion she had seen from him all day. "They found me," he whispered, his voice a choked gasp. "Who found you?" Sarah's pulse began to race, a frantic drum against her ribs. "The people who held me," he said, his eyes still glued to the black vehicle. "They don't want me back." As if on cue, two doors of the SUV opened. Two men in dark suits stepped out. Even from this distance, she could see the glint of government-style badges on their belts. They moved with a calm, unnerving purpose, walking directly toward the house. The man grabbed her arm, his grip surprisingly strong. "You have to believe me, Sarah." "Believe what?" she cried, trying to pull away. "That I escaped," he said, his voice dropping to an urgent whisper as the men reached their driveway. "And they don't want the truth about what they did coming out." Two suited men stopped at the edge of the driveway, their faces calm, almost too calm. The man standing beside Sarah shifted slightly, moving just a bit behind her, as if instinctively shielding her from a danger he saw coming. "Ma'am," the first agent said, his voice surprisingly gentle, "we need to talk." Sarah's gaze flickered from the men to the man beside her, then back again. "About him?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Yes," the agent confirmed, just as her son appeared in the doorway of their home, his young eyes wide, watching everything unfold. The second agent's attention was fixed on the man with Sarah. "Sir, please step forward." The man didn't move. "I'm not leaving," he replied, his voice firm and steady now. A stark contrast to the quiet unease that had filled the air moments before. "You declared me dead." The first agent took a slow, deliberate breath. "Michael Carter was confirmed deceased 3 years ago," he stated, his tone leaving no room for argument. "That file is closed." The man's jaw tightened. Then open it. An unnerving silence stretched across the yard, thick with unasked questions. Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the quiet afternoon. She looked from the stoic agents to the man she thought she knew, the man who had come back to her. "Tell me the truth," she whispered, the words catching in her throat. The agent opened a sleek black folder. Inside lay a stack of classified documents, their pages stamped with warnings. He carefully laid out a series of photographs from a mission overseas. One showed a body, recovered from a wreckage, so damaged it was unrecognizable. But glinting against the charred fabric was a set of dog tags, the name clearly visible, Michael Carter. Sarah felt a wave of dizziness wash over her as the world tilted on its axis. "That wasn't me," the man said quietly, his eyes locked on the horrifying image. "They switched our identities." The two agents exchanged a loaded, imperceptible glance. It was a look that spoke volumes, confirming a hidden truth they had fought to keep buried. Finally, the second agent broke the tense silence. "There was an operation," he admitted, his voice low and measured. "Highly confidential." Sarah's own voice trembled as she asked the question she was terrified to have answered. "What kind of operation?" The agent hesitated for a fraction of a second before delivering the unbelievable truth. "Deep cover replacement." The words hung in the air, surreal and impossible. "In extremely rare cases," the agent continued, explaining the unthinkable, a soldier's identity is reassigned to another operative. It's done for strategic protection of assets and missions of the highest national importance. Sarah slowly turned, her entire world narrowing to the face of the man standing beside her. The man who had held her, who had shared her bed, who she had welcomed back from the dead. "You're not Michael," she breathed, the question feeling like a betrayal. He closed his eyes for a brief moment, a flicker of pain crossing his features before he opened them and met her gaze. "No." In that single word, the life she thought she had reclaimed shattered into a million pieces. The world seemed to stop spinning. "My name was erased," he said, his voice raw with a history she couldn't comprehend. "I became him. I memorized his life, every detail, every story. I learned his memories, his love for you." Tears began to well in his eyes, genuine and full of a sorrow that was entirely his own. "But what I felt when I came home, what I feel for you, that was real. It was always real." Just then, her son, who had been watching from the doorway, took a hesitant step forward onto the porch. He looked at the man, his expression a mixture of confusion and unwavering childhood trust. "You tucked me in every night," he said, his small voice cutting through the tension. The man turned to him, his hard features softening instantly. "Yes," he answered gently. "You taught me how to ride a bike," the boy continued, taking another step closer. "Yes," the man replied, a faint, sad smile touching his lips. "You're my dad," the boy declared with the simple, profound certainty only a child possesses. The yard fell silent once more, the weight of the boy's words pressing down on everyone. The first agent lowered his voice, a hint of regret, or perhaps just weariness, in his tone. "This program was a mistake. It was shut down years ago. It should never have happened." He looked from the man to Sarah. He was never meant to return. Operatives in his position are designated as permanent assets. They don't come home. Sarah's chest tightened, a cold fury rising within her. You used him, she accused, her voice shaking with rage. You used my husband's memory. He was used for a mission. Yes, the agent replied, his professional detachment unwavering. And now? Sarah demanded. What happens now? The agent's next words were a death sentence of a different kind. Now, he legally doesn't exist. The man you know as Michael Carter is a ghost. He has no identity, no rights, no past. The man, this stranger who felt more familiar than her own reflection, looked at Sarah one last time, his eyes filled with a desperate plea and a profound sacrifice. I broke every rule to come back, he told her. I came back because I chose you, I chose this family. He took a steadying breath, and I'll disappear again. If you want me to. I'll walk away, and you'll never see me again. He gave her the choice, placing the shattered remnants of her life and her future squarely in her hands. Sarah looked at him, at the face she had loved, lost, and found again. She looked at her son, who saw only his father. She looked at the two agents, representatives of a cold, faceless system that had tried to steal her life. And this time, as she stepped closer to the man who had risked everything for a life that wasn't his, she didn't hesitate.